So for all those Republicans who've been whining about the impeachment hearings taking place behind closed doors and packing their pens and pencils and storming the skiffs, ooh, careful what you wish for, because the full House is voting on a resolution tomorrow that'll move the impeachment inquiry into its next phase, and it's a public one, meaning that the witnesses, lifelong diplomats, military officials, and career public servants who've been speaking to lawmakers behind closed doors will soon be visible to all Americans, offering their explosive accounts of the president's conduct in full view. This as NBC News learns of a new framework House Democrats are looking at to sharpen their case against President Trump, the ABCs of impeachment, which the founders laid out to define what constitutes high crimes and misdemeanors. The Ukraine scandal has all three. A, for abuse of power. In this case, the allegations that Trump used his office for his own personal gain. B, for betrayal. Trump betraying national security interests by compromising military aid to a nation, an ally, Ukraine, that's critical to countering Russian aggression. And C, for corruption, the U.S. president trying to get a foreign power to intervene and corrupt our elections. Joining our conversation, politics editor for the Daily Beast, Sam Stein. What do you think? ABC, going to do it?
It's simple. I think to a large degree, Democratic leadership has read this pretty well. Not just the last couple of weeks, but I think Pelosi saying, slow down, let's not do this for months upon months upon months, makes it seem as if she wasn't thirsting for impeachment, which I think is serving her very well now. But these things can go haywire, obviously. And I know from my reporting that yesterday, Democratic leadership, including Pelosi, were talking about the difficulties that they may encounter in public forums. We saw this already where the House Judiciary Committee tried to bring in high-profile witnesses, and Republican members used various parliamentary procedures and stunts to essentially make them into political circuses. They want to figure out a way to avoid that happening again because they want it to seem professional. They also want to get to the point, and they know that this is a showcase to actually sell impeachment to the public. And so they're trying to devise a set of rules that will actually eliminate the ability of Republicans to do those types of stunts. Whether they can actually do that in practice is another thing entirely. We know that Republicans are eager to do disruptive behavior. We saw them storming the skiff. So I think this is a very delicate situation we have going forward into the next couple of weeks. A highly different situation than what we've had in the past couple of weeks, which is depositions, strategic leaks, or testimonies being put out by lawyers that are highly damaging to the administration. This one is a bit more of a show.
You know, what strikes me is that what held Pelosi up, what I understand, and correct me if this is wrong, was that public opinion hadn't swung in favor of impeachment after the Mueller report came out. And then she left it to the committees that would have Robert Mueller and his witnesses to do the work of swinging public opinion. Here she's gotten the latest Quinnipiac poll, 55% of Americans, not just for the impeachment investigation, but for the removal of Donald Trump from office a year before an election. She also has, in a poll I saw today, 65% of Americans oppose any sort of stonewalling from the Trump White House. I mean, she's got the wind at her back in terms of public opinion, something she never had after Mueller.
Well, you can make the case, and this is a criticism, Pelosi, that public opinion has followed leadership, that a good chunk of the public that wasn't there initially were Democrats who were following her lead, and when she jumped on board, they followed her. Now, luckily, we have a former member of Congress who worked under Pelosi. She is a highly, I would say, a cautious politician at heart, but also a prudent one. And she doesn't do things without recognizing that there's success down the road for her. And so maybe you could speak to how she strategically looks at impeachment from whether it's a vote gathering perspective or just a public opinion perspective.
She reads Donna's op-eds, for one.
Well, look, I do think that what she's done here, she's made sure that her caucus is in the right place. And I think that's really important because she's going to need all of them to be in line on this vote tomorrow and then subsequently. I think the rule that they've constructed actually plays into the narrative that the speaker wants. She's obviously taken control of the process. And they've tried to construct it so that, for example, Adam Schiff will be able to tell uninterrupted to tell the story, which has not happened in some of these other hearings where there's a back and forth and back and forth. Staff counsel will be able to answer questions. I would say it would be great if they allowed staff counsel to do that first and then go to the 5-minute interchange between Republicans and Democrats because, again, it allows a story to be told that's really coherent. I think that what I would say is that Speaker Pelosi has really seized this process. She understands where it needs to go, and she's trusted the leadership, in particular of Adam Schiff, to help get us there. And then when the public hearings come, I think each one of these witnesses that will be called will be able to tell that story, and allotted the president the due process that they've complained about by allowing the president to bring witnesses, to present evidence, to ask questions. That is actually pretty unprecedented in terms of the level that's been given.
Chuck, I'm sure it pains you, as it does me, to sort of compare the public reception of the Mueller investigation to the public reception of impeachment. But as someone who sort of stood at the center of law enforcement and a public-facing role in your jobs, why do you think this is piercing through in a way that's swinging numbers like they never swung during the Mueller probe?
It's easier. I think it's just easier. The Mueller report is incredibly compelling. I shouldn't admit this on television, but I just read it again.
I believe you.
Reading it.
It is amazing that I mean, I'll admit this too. So we're in the Geek Club together. You flip open to any page and you're like, I can't believe this happened, and nothing happened to Donald Trump.
I should be more specific, Sam. I read volume 2 again.
Okay. It's not helping. It's not helping.
Trying to figure out why it didn't resonate. Because when you read it, the litany of crime and cover-up, intentionally so, it strikes me in some ways as more dramatic, more damning, and more compelling than the Ukraine matter, which is pretty bad.
Yeah.
So I'm at a bit of a loss other than to say one thing was complicated and dense, and it took a long time to sort of unfurl, right, 22 months. And the other thing happened very quickly, and the story could be told simply. And maybe that just resonates more, Nicole.
Yeah. You know, and I think it's also the difference of the Mueller probe felt like it was investigating something sophisticated, a conspiracy between the Russians, and the Ukrainian thing just felt like the robbers went in ski masks, they tied up the family, and they stole all their stuff. You know, whereas the other one, was a sophisticated effort to steal credit card numbers. I mean, there's something scummier about a president getting on a call with a foreign leader and saying, hey, can you smear Joe Biden and his kid? It's gross.
Yeah, it was simpler. It was easier to understand. And I can out-nerd you, actually, because I've been re-listening to the Lawfare podcast of Volume 2, which tells the story.
Let me get both of you Netflix subscriptions.
It is really dramatic. But having said all of this, Nancy Pelosi's prudence, I think, is actually paying off, because things have changed, events have changed. The whistleblower came forward. The Ukraine narrative is easy now to explain and to understand. And now we're getting this flood of witnesses from the administration willing to testify. This has changed the dynamic. And yes, it's a legitimate question, I think. Would public opinion have changed if she would have moved more quickly? And I think that she was justified after the Mueller report came out. But you do get the sense, and you also get the sense among Republicans, that they're back on their heels. I'm reading a lot of conservative media, and they're flailing angrily because it is more and more difficult. They're raging about the process, but that has an expiration date on it. That fig leaf is going to be torn off, and then they have to confront the reality, and they have to understand that everything gets worse. The evidence gets worse. There may be more smoking guns. There may be more witnesses. The venue gets worse when it goes on television. And then, of course, there's Donald Trump, who is going to give them more things they're going to have to defend, because we know that when he gets under pressure, he can behave even more in a more unhinged manner. So Republicans are asking themselves, what am I going to have to defend? How bad is this going to get? So you do have, I think, the coming together, and Nancy Pelosi's timing feels pretty good. I mean, kind of amazingly, maybe the Democrats are not going to screw this up.
Well, look, I don't want to put this back on the Democrats, but maybe both things are true. I mean, maybe the Mueller report and socializing all that criminality. I mean, even if you didn't read the Mueller report, you heard that there were 150 contacts between the Trump orbit and Russia. Even if you didn't read the whole thing, you know that there were, maybe 10 times where if he wasn't president, he could have been charged with obstruction of justice. I mean, maybe it is the 1-2 punch of the Mueller investigation and all the crimes he uncovered, as well as the SDNY porn star cover-up stuff. I mean, maybe there is enough.
So I would say two things to this. One, first of all, I haven't reread any reports, so who knows what.
You have a life.
One thing is that, unlike the Mueller report, in this case, you actually do have the the screams coming from within the administration, right?
Right.
There are people who Donald Trump hired who are saying,
Correct.
whoa, 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 this is wrong. That adds an element that's fairly digestible for the public. It says, wow, even his own people think that.
Yeah.
And two, there is something sort of hidden about a whistleblower report. With the obstruction of justice with respect to the Mueller report, a lot of it was happening in front of us in real
Yeah.
time. And we understood it and we got outraged by it, but then it was in the past. With this, there was something deep and dark and nefarious about a whistleblower report about a cryptic call that was hit on a server. And I think for the public, that is, sinister. And I
Right.
think, and that drives people towards
Obviously, inside the West Wing, it was sinister, too.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.